Many thanks for staying with us here on TV47 tonight. Welcome to TV47 Spotlight. These are some of the stories making headlines. Ahead on TV47 Spotlight, a 6-month-old infant and an 83-year-old among the 690 new COVID infections recorded today. 16 people arrested over fresh tribal skirmishes in NJORO, Nakuru County that have left 5 people dead and caused others displaced. Plus, Tangatanga allied members of parliament take a swipe at Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya and Devolution CS Eugene Wamalwa over what they call duped sugar millers bailout. And tonight we bring you the untold challenges of persons who have hearing impairment and cannot use proper hand signs to communicate. A very warm welcome. My name is Mumbi Chege. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Faith Cheptile. Now we begin with COVID numbers. 690 people have tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 24 hours after a sample of 5,393 was tested, bringing the total number of positive cases in the country to 22,053. 58 people have been discharged after recovering from the virus. 5 others have succumbed to the virus, raising the number of fatalities to 369. And away from that, 16 people, among them an assistant chief, have been arrested in connection with tribal clashes that rocked parts of Nesut, Mariashoni and Olposimoru areas in NJORO, Nakuru County. The suspects shall be arraigned in court tomorrow.
According to Rift Valley Regional Commissioner George Natembeya, the 16 suspects will be presented in court tomorrow to face charges of murder, arson, assault and promoting warlike activities. He condemned the incident that has left 5 people dead, 40 admitted in various hospitals and over 80 injured.
Kufikia juzi, watu 5 walikuwa wamefariki, wameuawa kwa hizo vita. Watu 83 walikuwa wameumia, 40 ndio tunaongea kwa sasa bado wako hospitalini. Huko hapa Provincial General Hospital kuna wengine ambao wamekuwa referred hapo, wengine wako Molo, wengine wako NJORO, wengine wako Elbagon wanapata matibabu. Hawa ambao waliumia, mdogo ako na miaka 19. Na yule mzee kabisa ako na miaka 58. Hawa 5 ambao walikufa, yule mdogo ako na miaka 16. Yule wa juu ako na miaka 35. Kuna mmoja ambaye hatukupata ile documentation, ni a non adult, kwa hivyo hatujadhibitisha miaka yake ni ngapi.
The skirmishes left at least 198 houses torched and over 3,000 residents displaced from 10 villages who are now camping at Nesuit, Ainaptich, Misengekwa primary schools and Elbagon police station. Natembeya noted that the national and county governments, in partnership with Kenya Red Cross Society, have started distributing foodstuff, medicines and construction materials to the affected families in the camps, calling on those whose houses were not set ablaze and are still in the temporary camps to go back to their homes.
Ambao wametoroka nyumbani kwa sababu ya hizi vita ni watu 3,800, 3,008. Wengi sasa wako Nesuit Primary School, Msegekwa Primary School, Elbagon Police na mahali naitwa Ainaptich Primary School. Zile nyumba ambazo zimechomwa, nyumba za hali tofauti. Kuna zile za nyasi, kuna zile za mabati, ni 198. Tumewakamata watu 16 kutoka kwa jamii zote mbili, wako kwa police station, wamehojiwa, wamerecord statement na watapelekwa kotini kesho.
The Rift Valley Regional Commissioner further added that the regional security teams have been in consultation with Kenya Forest Service and the National Lands Commission to come up with a lasting solution on the perennial fighting that has been attributed to land. He called on the locals to embrace peace and coexist in harmony. For TV47, my name is Tracy Mukami.
And in politics, leaders from Western region allied to Deputy President William Ruto have today held prayers for Mwambu Mabonga in Bumula constituency at his home. Now the legislators have condemned the handshake team for undermining the constitution. They also denounced Baringo Senator Gideon Moi's candidature for 2022 presidential election.
The legislatures led by former National Assembly Chief Whip, who is also the Member of Parliament for Mumias East, Benjamin Washali, have called on President Uhuru Kenyatta to purpose the aim of the handshake not to undermine the constitution.
Handshake ilileta peace, amani katika nchi hii yetu ya Kenya. Lakini sasa handshake imepita kiwango. Kwa sababu hii handshake ime-undermine constitution yenye wewe mwenyewe ulibeba katika Kasarani, ukaapa kwamba utaifuatilia na uyunge mkono. Handshake sasa imeleta, ukienda katika bunge, Mheshimiwa Wanga ni chairperson wa committee ya finance. Mheshimiwa wa ODM mwingine ni deputy wa Justice and Legal Affairs wa ODM.
Former Kakamega Senator Boni Halwale has called for a probe to determine how the Minister of Health spent the COVID-19 funds, stating that the handshake has encouraged corruption in the country.
Audit aliambia President Uhuru Kagwe amekunywa chai ya milioni 4. Mpaka kufikia sasa Uhuru hajauliza mbona chai ikanunuliwa kwa shilingi milioni 4. If Uhuru wants to fight corruption, he should not do practice on the sons of the Luya nation. Hii practice yenye anafanyia kwa Waluke, tunataka aanze kule Nairobi.
The legislators also condemned the COG chairman Wycliffe Oparanya, devolution CS Eugene Wamalwa and Court Secretary General Francis Atwoli for what they say is misleading the Luya nation. They disproved Baringo Senator Gideon Moi's candidature for the presidency in 2022.
If you are thinking that Gideon Moi can be the president of this nation, I am better off 100 times. But Kenya sio wajinga. Kutoa kiti kwa family ya Kenyatta ambaye aliongoza miaka 14, mtoto yake ametuongoza miaka 10, total 24 years. Tena turudi kwa family ya Moi ambaye alituongoza 24 years, ukijumulisha hizo family mbili zimetuongoza 48 years. Tena eti ya kwamba 2022 tubebe kiti turudishie mtoto ya Moi. Mungu yangu. Mungu yangu. Ukiwa mbinguni. Sikia maombi ya Wakenya.
On the emotive and divisive revenue share discourse, the MPs pledged their support for the one man, one shillings model.
Wanasema one man, 1 vote 1 shilling. Tumesikia wanasema hivyo. Mimi nasema 1 shilling 1 development. 2 shillings 2 development.
The revenue sharing formula has proved a hard nut to crack for the Senate, where 6 sittings are failing to reach a consensus on the matter. The Senate is set to sit again on Tuesday. Wanji Sostin, TV47, Bungoma.
And leadership wrangles have rocked the KANU party in NYERI County, with 2 rival groups fighting over leadership of the party that has declared its support for the ruling Jubilee Party. Now, one faction led by Mount Kenya Region Chairperson Joseph Njunge Mukirai says that it recognizes John Moya as the branch chairman, while the other group led by NYERI Combative Chairman Karanja Njeru insisting some regional leaders in the party do not have the best interest of the party at heart and that their only goal is to bring disunity in the party.
We have resolved we want one KANU, one office under the leadership of Mr. Moya. Tumeuliza hawa wengine akina Karanja wakuja waketi na Moya na wasiende headquarters.
Ningetaka kuuliza mwenyekiti wa kitaifa wa chama cha KANU asikubali hawa brokers ambao wanaegemea upande mmoja wakitafuta pesa tu kwake, wakimwambia ati wanakuja kufua chama cha KANU. Aliwachio fibo ni baba yake Daniel Authority Abuoi. Hiyo fibo aitike sawa sawa, asitingike, atembee katika mkoa huu wakati tuko tayari kumtembeza kwa wafuasi wetu wa chama cha KANU. Wakati huu tukianza habari ya registration, tutaanza registration na tunataka aje afungue maofisi yetu ya chama cha ile liwacho ni baba yake.
Now, 2 matatu circles in Nakuru town have clashed over a call for a countrywide strike amid concerns over the state of the new stages and COVID-19 regulations, with Nakuru town operators members insisting the planned strike for tomorrow is still on. The Matatu Owners Associations insist the operators association has failed to comply with the regulation, thus misleading its members.
According to Central Rift Matatu Owners Association Chairperson Stephen Muli, his members will not take part in the planned strike, saying business will go on as usual. Muli allayed fears of a total paralysis in the sector.
Kila sako lazima comply. Wale wanasema wanataka kukoma sababu ya hii compliance ya COVID-19 Nakuru County, nataka kuambia ya kwamba wachakue kufanya biashara ama wakae nyumbani.
Muli noted that the move to have a strike was politically instigated by some leaders in Nakuru County. He warned politicians to keep off the crucial PSV sector, which ferries millions of Kenyans daily. Similarly, the Central Rift MOA Vice Chairperson Peter Wambugu announced the vehicles will be on the road as usual.
Tunaambia wateja wetu hivi, kesho matatu zitafanya kazi kama kawaida. Ikiwa kuna mtu anaona hatafanya kazi, asiinterfere na wenye wanafanya nini? Wanafanya kazi.
However, Nakuru County Matatu's operators chairperson Francis Njoroge, while insisting the strike is on, said the county has failed to rehabilitate the new Matatu terminus. Njoroge says the situation at the terminus is a stark contrast of the county's much publicized efforts to fight the spread of COVID-19. Immaculate Ouma, TV47, Nairobi.
The county government of NZOIA, through the Deputy Governor Dr. Stanley Taras, has come out to deny allegations by healthcare workers that they lack quarantine and isolation facilities. Our reporter Boniface Baraza has the details.
These are complaints by healthcare workers in Tanzania County who say they are worried about their well-being.
We have colleagues who are now positive, and unfortunately, these colleagues have been instructed to isolate themselves at home. And we do not know the progression of the disease. Maybe the next day we shall call our colleague and they are dead in their rooms.
If we are not going to be protected at all, our things are going to be in a mess, and even we are going to infect our families.
This situation is giving the leadership of this county sleepless nights, and through Dr. Stanley Taros, the Deputy Governor, the county is putting in place measures to address the grievances.
Hapa Trans-Nzoia, numbers ziko zinaelekea juu. Sahi Trans-Nzoia mpaka vile tunaongea mpaka sahi watu 10 tayari wamepata hiyo virusi ya corona hapa Trans Nzoia. Tunashukuru Mungu, watu watatu walipona, wameweza kwenda nyumbani. Saa hii wale ambao wako tunawazidi kuwachunguza ni watu 7. Tuko na hata maafisa wetu wa afya wengine ambaye walipata na ugonjwa, lakini tunawashughulikia. Wengine wako private clinic, wengine wako Mount Elgon, na serikali inazidi kuwashughulikia.
Kuhusu madaktari wetu kusema sehemu yao ya kutengwa wakingangana na virusi haijatengwa, wao madaktari lazima pia wachungwe, ndio wachunge wananchi. Na unajua kazi ya udaktari sio kazi, hiyo ni wito. Wamepewa kibali na Mungu na lazima tuwape motisha ili wasaidie watu wetu.
However, Tarus urged religious leaders to pray for frontline workers who risk their lives to combat the spread of the deadly coronavirus.
Tunashukuru rais alifungua makanisa, na mzidi kuombea madaktari wetu ili wakuwe na afya mzuri ili waweze kutushughulikia. Nafikiri hata tukimaliza hapa wengine wetu tutaenda kwa makanisa tushukuru Mungu ili hii corona ipate kutuondokea kwa jina la Yesu. Ama mnasema nini? Tungependa tupone, turudi hali ya kawaida. Tusikue tu tunaishi kwa uoga kwa maneno ya corona.
On his part, the leader of minority in the County Assembly of Trans Nzoia, Emmanuel Waswa, said the fight against COVID-19 is and should be a collective responsibility.
Lazima tufate sheria ya nchi kwa ajili ya virusi vya corona. Najua Wakenya wengi hawataki kusikia sheria, wanataka kuona, na ukiona utaonea kwa mwili wako, na ukikufa huwezi amuka. Kwa hivyo ninaomba mfuate hizo sheria, kwa sababu wanasema daktari wa mwili yako ni wewe mwenyewe.
The leaders were speaking during distribution of relief food to families of boda riders in Kolongolo. Bonfas Barasa, TV47, Trans Nzoia County.
Many thanks for staying with us on TV47 Spotlight. Let's take a short break. We'll be back with much more in just a moment. Thank you for staying with us here on TV47 Spotlight. Let's get to our discussion tonight. We'll be discussing about the wrangles between the health sector and the government over unpaid dues for the nurses, complaints of a lack of proper gear while handling COVID-19, and what happened to the welfare package. I will be talking to Seth Panyako, the Secretary of Kenya National Union of Nurses. Seth Panyako, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear Mumbi.
All right, good to have you on the show tonight. Thank you for speaking to us. Seth, previously you have said that nurses and medics at the forefront, battling COVID-19, are risking their lives, and most of them have no proper equipment in handling this pandemic. So how many counties have met the requirement by the government, of having the proper equipment so far? We've had nurses from Kisii, Homa Bay complaining that they don't have, the proper gear. So how many counties have complied?
First of all, before I say anything, I want to send a message of condolence to my colleague Nurse Miriam, who has passed on at Kisii Level 5 Hospital in Kisii, having contracted COVID-19 in her line of duty in pregnancy. She was managed properly and she gave birth. She had progressed very well on treatment, and she was waiting for the final test for her to be released home if she were to test negative. But unfortunately, she developed chest pain and she passed on. We from the Nurses Union want to pass our sincere condolence to her family, friends and relatives. And this is a call-up that no one is talking about this nurse anywhere. If it was someone else, everybody will be talking about someone has died from COVID-19, but because it's a nurse, no one is talking about her. Many nurses are losing lives and no one is actually talking about them. It is going to be the responsibility of this union to ensure that we continue talking about the problems that are facing nurses. When coming back to your question, you see we have no any single county in Kenya that can say it has adequate personal protective equipment as well as other related instruments required to manage COVID-19. You see here in Nairobi, which is the headquarters, we have Kenyatta National Hospital in the recent past has had so many problems about supply of personal protective equipment. But with the intervention of my union and my branch leadership in Kenyatta National Hospital, that has been sorted out. But you saw what has happened in Pumwani. Pumwani is now closed. Mutuini is closed. At least we have Mukuru Kwanjenga, there's a health center that has been closed. We have got 4 health facilities in Nairobi that have been closed. So when you see Pumwani Maternity Hospital, which is one of the largest maternity hospital in the region, closing down because of infection of healthcare workers on matters that are attributed to lack of personal protective equipment, what else will you say? There can be no anywhere in this country where we have adequate quality personal protective equipment than Pumwani Hospital, because that is the largest hospital, maternity hospital in Eastern Central Africa, and therefore I can confidently tell you that there is no any county in Kenya that has adequate personal protective equipment, because when you talk of a county, it means that both private and public health facilities must have adequate personal protective equipment, and that is lacking in all health facilities, all counties in Kenya. We do not have a single county that can say it has 100% personal protective equipment.
Seth, so who's to blame? Because in May, the president released, and he announced that they were releasing 2.66 billion shillings, the Ministry of Health. So where did the money go to?
Your question is as good as the question I've been asking for so many years, for so many days now. Now it's going to months. From the time COVID-19 was declared in this country, we have had a lot of contribution, a lot of Ministry of Health Resources are money allocating to COVID-19 management. We have had the World Bank allocating money to Kenya, and all this money that have come in this country, no one is accounting for it. the personal protective equipment that have been even donated in this country by organizations like the Ma Foundation, Jack Ma Foundation from China, have all been installed in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on the officers of the Ministry of Health and in collusion with the JKA employees have stolen those donated equipment, and I understand those equipment have found their way back in the economy in the country as having been bought and sold to some of the counties. I understand Murang'a is one of the counties that has received those personal protective equipment that were donated, but they have gone there as having been sold. You are also aware that we had an officer in the Ministry of Health who was found to have supplied a personal protective equipment and taken several millions on himself. And the only thing that the ministry did was to transfer this officer to another ministry. That shows clearly that the web and corruption and the chatterlands of corruption and in the ministry by the big boys and the big girls of this country, because we cannot be told that in Afia House is the only place where nobody can be prosecuted for corruption. When you are found that you are corrupting, in fact, Afia House, we talk about life of Kenyans, and when you allow people to steal things that will go into saving lives of Kenyans and assisting health workers provide services that are supposed to be provided to Kenyans, then you are an accomplice to those people who are stealing and costing the lives of Kenyans. So the corruption in Afia House, if it's not checked, we are not seeing the success of this war against COVID-19.
Seth, when you talk of corruption, we know that from what we understand, we know that nurses have not been paid for the last 3 months, and we also know that there has been a row going on about the new revenue formula that was ordered by CRA, and we know that some services in counties have been halted, unpaid salaries, a lot of things have been, at a standstill. So does this new proposal have anything to do with the unpaid salaries, or are you going to say that it's corruption that's causing all this, the unpaid salaries for the nurses?
Definitely, for those, it is not only nurses. All public workers working within the county governments have not been paid, some of them from May, June. And when you talk about May, June, it is not about the sharing of revenue. That is purely on corruption. Those counties that have not paid the month of June and July, June and May, is purely corruption. The money has been diverted to other activities with the hope that they were to get other money, I don't know from where. When they're not given money for development and they use money that is meant for payment of recurrent expenditure, and they use it for building of toilets along the road and leveling of graveling and making some bridges somewhere, and that's where they can get kickbacks with a hope that they were to get developmental money. When the development does not come, then they are stuck. They cannot be able to pay salaries. When it comes to July, that salary for July that has not been paid, that's purely attributed to non-passing of the budget, the division of revenue bill in the Senate, because the county governments have no access to money. Ideally, if the budget has not been passed, the law requires that 50% of the money should be dispersed to go and take care of the recurrent expenditure. But in this case, we are looking at a situation where there is an attempt to reduce the allocations for county governments that were allocated in the last financial year. So if you want to release, the treasury wants to release 50% of the cash that's supposed to go to the counties, it is now not able to do that because it does not know 50% is going to amount to what. But as a union, definitely a reduction in revenue allocation to county governments, especially those that the money that they received the last financial year, if that money is reduced, it can only lead to several issues. One of them, it can be laying off of staff in the county government, because those staff who are employed on the basis that money had been allocated, more money had been allocated to the county governments, that money will now not be there. So those workers will have to be laid off. It also brings the issue of lack of promotions for those health workers and nurses and other public servants who are supposed to be promoted. They will not now be promoted because will have the
We seem to be having a hitch there, a technical hitch, but we'll try to get Seth Panyako back. He's the Secretary of Kenya National Union of Nurses. We're talking about the wrangles between the health sector, the healthcare workers and the government over unpaid dues and also complaints about the equipment gears that, in battling COVID-19. The welfare packages. So we'll try to get him so that we can get a better understanding of all the chaos that's going on. Now, the OGIEKS community members want the government to implement an order by the African Court on Human and People's Rights in Arusha to resettle them to end the population's untold suffering. Now, the community members say no action has happened 3 years after the court made the ruling.
The OGIEKS community members who met in Nandi County to plead with the government to honor the court's ruling lamented that they have been subjected to a lot of suffering after being uprooted from Kipkurere, Tinderet, Sengalo and Sengonik forest blocks, which is part of the Mau forest complex.
Sisi wana wa OGIEKS hatujapata uhuru tangu siku hiyo. Sisi tumetembea kuanzia Kenya mpaka Ethiopia. Tukarudi huko. Tuliwakilisha kesi yetu huko Arusha. Vile kesi ilifanywa, kesi ilikatwa ya kwamba sisi turudishwe nyumbani. Paka wa leo ilikuwa tarehe 26 mwezi wa 5 mwaka wa 2017. Na hadi wa leo serikali imekuja kukalia hiyo judgment ambaye African Court of Justice ilitoa.
Hii misitu hii, ukiona misitu hii, wakati watu wa kabila ingine walikaa wa reserve, tukakawa hii misitu. Tuko na map yetu 1907, tuko na map aliandikwa 1907 reserve.
Hatutaki kutupatia makao yetu. Tunatetea tukilia nyumbani. Tunataka twende nyumbani ka.
Calvin Chitwa, TV47, Uasin Gishu County.
For many girls and young women forced to stay at home as schools remain shut, menstruation comes at a high cost. They often have to choose between food on the table and basic hygiene. But a new initiative by Plan International has eased the burden on families living in Mathare and Nairobi by offering free showers and sanitary towels.
15-year-old Jacinta Mutethia lives with her mother Jemima Kalemi in Mathare, one of the most densely populated informal settlements in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. The challenge of menstrual hygiene management goes beyond just accessing sanitary pads. For many girls like Jacinta, menstruation comes at a high cost.
Kwa kitisha mazao pesa na wanasema mazao na wanyima juu. Hakuna otherwise juma zao, itabidi wachange za sapa.
As a result, Plan International, a development and humanitarian organization, came up with a Shower for Girls project that pays for girls like Jacinta and Glorian Wairimu to access bathroom services.
We wanted to ensure that we were responding to specific needs for girls in a way that is very personal and that is transformative. So we'll be looking to see what are the lessons learned from that and how we might scale that up and how that informs our urban programming as we move forward.
The project was started to ease the burden on both girls and their parents, torn between the option of putting food on the table and addressing sanitary needs. Initially, most of these needs were being addressed in schools, which distributed free sanitary pads and provided bathrooms and toilets. But with the closure of schools and shortage of water, the project has become a lifeline for many here.
Before corona ikuje, life ilikuwa poa, tulikuwa shule. Shule ulikuwa unapata enough water, ulikuwa unaoga asubuhi na jioni. Sasa ukiwa home unapata ati utoga once per day ama unakosa kuoga siku moja,
kunoga the next day juu ya maji.
Plan International is hoping to expand the initiative to reach more girls and is calling on the Kenyan government to prioritize hygiene for girls as part of its ongoing response to the pandemic. Nanok Lauren, TV47.
Thank you for staying with us. Let's take a short break. We'll be back with much more. Welcome back. Now, they live among us, and each day does not appear different for them from the face value, but deep inside them, persons living with hearing impairment have moving, untold stories. And like Andrine Kilemi reports, some cannot sign properly because they did not study the Kenya Sign Language in school. Take a look.
6 a.m. Monday, and we set out to Nairobi's Utawala Estate, which is approximately 24 kilometers from the country's capital, Nairobi. We are headed to Stephen Miner's residence, a 30-year-old man who since birth has never heard or uttered a word. He is deaf and dumb. We arrive at his home where he lives with his sister Monica. It is 7 a.m. He is ready to go to work, but first, a cup of tea. After having his breakfast, Miner grabs his backpack ready to start his journey to the city. And when he gets to town, he walks straight to his place of work. He opens up his business. This is where he gets his daily bread. He says he loves his job, even though the daily earnings are too little.
Mapato ya hii kazi yangu ni kidogo sana.
Maina went to school up to standard 3, and therefore communication between me and him is a bit complex. He did not learn the Kenyan Sign Language. His signs are local. His sister Monica narrates how Maina had once disappeared for a period of 10 years.
Tukamtafuta kwa manti na relatives hatukumpata. Ndio sasa tukaanza after 1 week akaanza kutangazwa, lakini hakupatikana. Sasa tumekaa nilikuwa primary by then, nikasoma high school nikamaliza, nikaenda college.
His family continued to look for him. Little did they know that their son was in Mombasa. How and when he got there is still a puzzle to date.
Mtafuta here and there, tulimtafuta kwa magazeti, kwa ma-TV, lakini hatukumpata. But at long last, niliona headline kwa newspaper Daily Nation ati alikuwa amepatikana Mombasa, lost and found, na nikatafuta my all means nikamwendea Mombasa.
And as soon as Monica got to the city of Mombasa, she was shocked after finding out that another woman was claiming Maina, saying that he had given birth to twins years back and that Maina was one of the twins who had disappeared.
Tulifika tukaonyeshana evidence, mimi nikapeana picha rasmi yenye alipigwa, yenye tumepigwa as a family, my dad, my mom, wote wenye tumezaliwa pamoja vile tumepigwa, tulienda nazo zote.
After in-depth investigations, Monica got to reunite with his brother Maina after a decade. They set out to Nairobi, where Maina now works as a street vendor. He sells beaded stuff alongside other basic commodities. His neighbors at work say he's quite a hard-working man.
Kama furugu sasa, kama makelele nini ama vita imeanza ama matia gazi yamerushwa, namwambia na kujanga namguza namwambia, namuonyesha sana, mpoimbia na mkono, namwambia hebu angalia pale. Akiona hivi akiona mahali watu wamekusanyika, anapenda sana, anakimbia hapo mbio. Anaenda anaanza kuangalia juu anaona fani, anaona vitu fani. Anasimama hapo anaangalia, alafu anarudi hapa anaanza kutuambia. Anaanza kunielezea venye ameona nini. Na anapenda sana akiona kwanza watu wakiibiwa ama wakishikwa kwa mfuko. Anapenda kukimbiza huyo mtu sana, anamsaidia, anamwambia funga hiyo mfuko. Huyo anataka kutuibia, anapenda hivyo sana.
Communication between Stephen and his clients is rather complex. It is this challenge, however, that enables him to meet his daily needs.
This is Mr. and Mrs. Yego's home. Yego and his wife have been married for a long time now. Their lives are dependent on sign language. The two cannot hear or speak. They were both born deaf and dumb. Before Yego met his wife Paris, he had married another woman whose hearing ability was just fine. After their first child was born, their marriage began to fall apart. Yego narrates of how one thing led to another until the two could not stay together any longer.
Nilikuwa na bibi mwingine ambaye alikuwa na uwezo wa kusikia. Tuliishi naye tukabarikiwa na mtoto wa kiume. Baadaye akatoroka na akabeba kila kitu pamoja na mtoto.
His wife Paris on the other end tells us of their challenges as a couple. She says since their marriage, she has not been able to bear a child.
Mara nyingi huwa najawa na mawazo kwa sababu sijafanikiwa kupata mtoto. Na pia nimeenda hospitalini na kufanyiwa uchunguzi na madaktari. Wakasema kuwa sina tatizo lolote. Nimepewa madawa lakini bado nawaza kwa nini sijapata mtoto.
Apart from that, the couple tells me that it is really difficult to live under the same roof with their inability to hear. Paris narrates how one morning she woke up and all their clothes had been stolen from the hanging lines outside.
Nilifua nguo, nikazianika hapa nje. Usiku wezi wakakuja wakazichukua zote kabisa, hadi zile za kanisa ambazo huwa tunaimba nazo.
With the current coronavirus pandemic, life hasn't been easy for Yego and his wife.
Nilikuwa na deni la nyumba, likawa linaongezeka mara kwa mara. Ya kwanza ilikuwa 5,000, ikawa 6,000, baadaye 8,000, kisha 10,000. Mara kwa mara mwenye nyumba alikuwa akilalamikia kodi kwa sababu hatukuwa tumelipa kwa miezi 3. Bwana yangu akazungumza naye na kumweleza kuwa hawajalipwa kwa muda huo wote. Akamweleza mwenye nyumba awe mtulivu kidogo ili azungumze na mkubwa wake kazini, lakini mkubwa naye akasema tutulie tu.
Their landlord says for 3 months now the couple hasn't been paying rent.
Na tangu 2017 nimekuwa na wao, tukisukumana na wao tu, saa ingine wanalipa nyumba, saa ingine inawasukuma, mimi nawapea nafasi tu watabute pesa. Na sababu najua ni watu hawajiwezi sana, nimekuwa nikiwavumilia na tumekaa tukifurahiana na wao. Na wakati hii COVID-19 imekuja, ndio sasa challenges ikawa ni wazi, maana kule huyu bwana alikuwa anafanya vibarua na huyu bibi yake akienda Nairobi kufanya vibarua, maisha ikawa ngumu sasa wakati wa lockdown.
Those are some of the challenges that the deaf community live with, and it is through these challenges that their lives become interesting, while overcoming them makes life meaningful. Andrin Kilemi for TV47.
What a story. Thank you so much for that report, Andreen. Now, in the majestic plains of Kenya's Masai Mara, the coronavirus pandemic spells economic disaster for locals who earn a living from tourists now who flock here to see the abundant wildlife. Even before the virus arrived in mid-March, tourism revenues had plummeted with cancellations from crucial markets like China, Europe, and the US.
The song and dance of the Maasai people have long drawn tourists to Kenya. But these face masks are not part of their traditional clothing. They are a sign of the coronavirus, which has driven away their main source of income.
We completely depend on tourists to make a living in our community. We are currently faced with a huge challenge because they're not visiting anymore. They pay $30 to come to our village, and that helps us sustain our families. As we speak, some of our people are not able to provide for their families. Some are sick and can't afford medical care.
The Masai Mara is one of Africa's best-known savanna regions, popular for its mixture of private conservancies and national reserve land. The traditional herders who live here get much of their revenue from renting their land out to tourism lodges. Some also opt to work in these establishments as cooks or guides. But right now, lodge managers cannot afford to pay the Maasai their usual rent.
This model depends on tourism. Tourists come into the camp and the money they pay to be in the camps for this to survive. So without this, so far what they're doing right now is that they're paying half.
The streets of Talek, a small village at the entrance to the reserve, are normally bustling with 4x4s. They are now empty. Nalakiti Sayalel has not sold any of her beaded necklaces and bracelets since the start of the year.
We cannot even sell our animals for money because all markets have been closed. Before the pandemic, at a time like this, I would make a lot of ornaments and make a lot of money.
Kenya declared its first COVID-19 case in March. Since then, international flights have stopped and national parks have closed. The capital, Nairobi, went into a strict lockdown. But trouble started even earlier for hotel and lodge owners. Over 80% of reservations were cancelled at the start of the year, many of them from Chinese or American clients.
If the landowners are not getting any revenue, they can't feed themselves, they can't send their kids to school, they would have no option but to look at other forms of land utilization. So whether that is fencing it off, whether it's selling it to people, and all those other alternate land uses don't go together with wildlife and elephants and big cats.
Kenya's tourism industry has already lost $750 million this year, according to official figures, roughly half of last year's total revenue. International flights here will restart in August, but the high season is already past, and many hotels will remain shut. As for the Maasai, they hope that domestic tourists will come to their rescue and get them through the year.
And in sports, Kenya has been eliminated from the ongoing online chess Olympiad after finishing 6th